Hey everybody, it's me, Diogen Z, here with another edition of Pokemon of the Week. I'm back from the land of the ill. Yes, I was sick last week. To present a fan favorite, one of my personal favorite dragons. It is Garchomp. And the greatness of this poke is that it's so loved that the Pokemon Company heard our pleas, or at least noted our enjoyment of it, to give it a Mega Evolution. We'll get to that later in this episode. First, I want to focus on what Garchomp does as a base set. Now, basically, it's best suited as a physical sweeper. Now, note, it does have some bulk, and we'll mention that later on in the episode too, what you can do with that extra bulk. But my preference when I see a base of 120 physical attack and a 102 speed is to just max those babies out and see what the best offensive moves it can have at its disposal, depending on what the poke is. And it has a decent moveset. Its move pool is not enormous, like some special sweepers that I know of. However, it does the job, and it really is best suited to what it has. It has Outrage, Earthquake, those two stab moves are taken care of for you. However, note, if you're using Outrage, there is a caveat for that 120 base power that you'll be walloping foes with, and that is Confusion. So the way to counteract that is either have a Lumberry to alleviate that sort of confusion, or just switch back out and switch in with Garchomp. It's very simple. That is a status that will be eliminated with a switch. It's not like Sleep or Paralysis that will stay the entire match. So it's a good thing to note. And it's especially good if you're having your Garchomp only appear for a limited amount of time and then retract them back before Ice Dragon or Fairy come onto the field. Now, since there's a lot more fairy types, obviously, we didn't have them before the 6th gen, there are poke that you wouldn't expect having a Moonblast that aren't necessarily fairy types, so it's understandable why you would want to hide your sweeper for a while. And especially if you go with the item's choice, Band or Scarf. Now, Scarf is for speed, so if you want to get that speed stat, even better to be assured that you'll get the first hit when Garchomp comes onto the field, as long as it's not having something attack it right away. Again, the obvious thing here would be to switch out on a weaker move, like a Steel-type move that's coming your way. This way, Garchomp can absorb the blow, and the foe goes running back to his Pokeball because, unfortunately, they know they can't fare against Garchomp. That's the best time for it to come out. And if you use the choice items, Band will boost your attack, your physical attack. It will lock you into one move. So again, keep that in mind. There are caveats for using every item that you want to manipulate your power levels with here. Of course, you could choose Life Orb, but then you're going to risk some health. So it's all options depending on how your playstyle is. Rough Skin is a great ability for if Garchomp gets any physical damage, especially if you plan to come in on those Steel-type moves that often are physically offensive. Rough Skin will damage the foe that touches the Garchomp just because it's so badass. It's got awesomeness oozing out of its pores, and that awesome gel will scaldify your enemy. And Sandveil, it's pretty sweet so long as the evasion clause is not up. Now, I've not normally played with any evasion clause, so I'm not entirely sure if this is what the truth is, but what I believe it means is that no evasive moves or abilities are allowed, so that you can't just use double team again and again and then win the match just because your opponent can't hit you. It's really ridiculous a stat to boost. So if that clause is up, Sandveil will not be good. However, if it's not up and you have a Sandstorm team to play Garchomp within, it will fit perfectly, having a better chance of dodging your foe's attacks. With set 2, we see about the same thing for set 1. Still, you get a maxing out of your attack and speed, but an important thing to note, always there is a caveat with any item you choose to use, it tends to be, unless it's like a citrus berry, in which, well, I don't know really citrus berries to be used in competitive play now that I think of it. It's very good for story mode, but in competitive you want an item that's a little bit more proactive towards your stats. So what happens with the stats when you have a Mega Garchomp, this kaiju looking beast if you've seen Pacific Rim or are just a Godzilla monster type fan, you'll know what I'm referencing. It loses speed. unfortunately, the Mach Pokemon, which is what it's classified as, has a reduction in speed for the bulky scythes that it wields and its bigger, buffed out chest plate. So unfortunately you lose speed, and no, you can't have a choice scarf on this, and that's where the Mega Evolution items sort of play their biggest role, is that you can't have an alternative item on there, so the stat alteration you get is significant. However, you can't further alter those stats with a life orb or a choice scarf to get that speed back. So with this reduction in speed, you might not always be guaranteed to strike first. However, the good thing is, with the Mega Evolution that Garchompite will relinquish, it will give you extra defense, boost special and physical defense slightly, which is good because you'll need it if you're not guaranteed that first strike and your opponent switches back out to an ice or dragon type. Now that could play a role in some one-hit kill shootouts, if you will, where if you're facing a dragon versus dragon and it's a tedious matchup of stats where you're not certain if your Garchomp will win, might be time to retract back and throw out that fairy to absorb the dragon type move with no effect. So really the wonderful thing about fairy types, although I don't feel as though they should be super effective against dragon just because it's a fairy, and look at how disastrously destructive that form is. How can a fairy defeat it? Well, either way, the typing itself makes metagame more interesting and balanced, because now you have something that absorbs a dragon type move as if a ghost type was being hit with a ground move. Or rather, a levitating poke was hit with a ground move. You know what I'm referencing. Anyway, other than that, I just wanted to mention the alteration in stats. Everything stays the same. The moves, nope, that's the one thing that does change, the ability. And this will probably make you alter your moveset as well if you're planning to throw Garchomp into a solid Sandstorm team, which it fills that niche spectacularly. Also has the option for Stealth Rocks, but that'll be geared more towards the next set. With Sand Force, you have your Ground, Rock, and Steel type moves upgraded in power by 33%. So combine that Earthquake with stab damage and then the Sand Force ability if Garchomp is present in a Sandstorm, and you're doing some potent damage. It may even prompt you to add Substitute to this set or Sword Stance, which is something I didn't mention in set 1, but it is an option. If you want some staying power on the field, obviously you can't achieve that for too long with Substitute and Mega Garchomp, just by the way that there's no recovery, there's no leftovers, there's no sort of move or item at this point with Mega Garchomp you could use to regain that health and then set up another sub. However, Sword Stance, if you want to throw your poke out on the field and immediately boost your moves, knowing that your opponent will run away in terror seeing this Mega Evolution, then you can do that. And then it will be an unstoppable physical force that will sweep your foes into the dustbin. But if instead of using a sweeper set, you're more of a defensive player and you like to stall your opponents and let them destroy themselves with switches and status moves, this next set's for you. Near the beginning of this episode, I mentioned that Garchomp possesses a little extra bulk, unlike some other dragon sweepers I know of. Flygon. So if you want to take advantage of that, here is the method you do that by. You can opt to have the extra boost in stats for your physical defense and physical defense and special defense with Garchompite. However, if you're planning to use a substitute set, probably would be better to use the original Garchomp that isn't Mega Evolved, simply because you can include leftovers on it, and if you want to stall further with Protect, it does have the possibilities of learning that move, so can leave Garchomp on the field for a good amount of time. Now, if you want to do a complete stat boosting maneuvering around your foe to make this thing offensive and defensively fierce, then you can include Sword Stance, Substitute, and whatever stab move you prefer, whether it be Dragon Claw or Earthquake. But please be perceptive enough to know that if you're using the Protect strategy, Mega Garchomp will not be your form. You need the normal one, this way you can attach leftovers, because Garchompite will completely take up the item slot. So, things to consider, all on the matter of item battling, and how you can make this Garchomp more fierce than it already is. I mean, if I saw this thing barreling at me underground, a fin above ground, I would start weeping and fall to the ground. Actually, no, I'd probably get out of there. I would start running, for real. I would be freaking the fuck out that there is such a thing called a land shark. I thought that was some type of beer. Anyway, kick it right here on Planet Poke. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned to this series, which, if you're new to it, I'm sorry. It's ending soon at episode 100, but rejoice. I'm taking requests from the crowd. Now, this next week's Pokemon was very much hyped up in the comments, so if you can get a lot of thumbs up for your comment and the poke that you suggest may be, in fact, it's a damn good chance as long as the numbers match, it will be the next Pokemon of the week. The next Pokemon of the week. So if you don't want to stop getting effort value sets and losing this information for your metagame, head on to my channel, youtube.com/DioGenZ, for the upcoming Pokemon Potential series. It's essentially the spiritual successor to this one. And I will be taking reanalyses of Pokemon I've already covered in this series. And I'll include all the commentary from the comments below that tried to aid my more sloppier sets from the beginning of the series. So, thanks for watching. I'm DioGenZ, and I'll see you next week. Hello everyone, welcome to my Heart Gold Soul Silver EV training guide. This is the introduction in which we will discuss what the heck is effort value training anyway. Well, here's a great comparison to make you realize the importance of these things, these hidden stats that Nintendo will not let you know about. Have you ever versed a friend who had the same